after we arrived in Othoni, we were there for a few days and we stayed in that little bay. And the wind was coming from the north and then it shifted to come from the south, so we were getting blown onto the island. And it was already pretty shallow there. It wasn't because it was uncomfortable that we decided to move the boat. It was because as we were going up and down, the rudder was hitting against the bottom. We were trying to make a decision where we were going to go because there was some heavy weather coming, but we wanted to move the boat right now. So we decided to just move it out in a spot where it was relatively shallow, still about 9 meters. And then there is a harbor on Othoni, but we hadn't checked it out. And on the maps, it's really small and it says there's like a bunch of rocks around it. The plan was to drop the anchor kind of just outside of the harbor, take the dinghy in, check out the harbor, check out the depths, make sure everything was okay, and then come in and dock. Also check to make sure there was space, because we wanted to stay on the islands for a few more days. We dropped the anchor at 9 meters. We set the anchor and it set super hard. We stop, we turn off the engine. The way the boat's moving is very uncomfortable with the waves. We decide we'll just leave Othoni and we'll just go straight to Corfu now. So we go to pick up the anchor. It is really fouled. It will not come up. We're like, well, that is not good. So we try to maneuver the boat a few different ways to see if we can get it unfouled, but it's just not working. So now we need to go into town and find somebody that can help us dive on the anchor and figure out what the problem is. Luckily, it's not very deep. We're only at like 9 meters, 25 feet deep, so it's not that deep, but I don't have wetsuits, I don't have scuba gear, I don't have anything to help with this problem, so we need to go find a local. We'll start at the Port Authority and see if we can get some help to unfoul the anchor so then we can go to our new anchorage. But it seems like the chain is probably wrapped around some rocks. Hopefully it's not that big of a deal to fix, but it seems pretty stuck. On the whole island during the winter, there's maybe 50 people. So we go in and we talk to some people that we had met, and they're like, why'd you do that? There's rocks there. I'm like, I know, it's stuck. Can you help us? And they're like, you shouldn't have done that. I was like, I know. Like, what do we do? Like, do you have any advice for what we can do to help? Do you know anybody with scuba gear? They're like, there's nobody on this island with scuba gear. I was like, okay, so what do you think we can do? And they're like, well, take this big fishing buoy, tie it to your chain, drop the chain, leave the anchor, and come into the harbor and dock. And I was like, really? That's the solution? We're going to leave the anchor out there? And they're like, yes, and then whenever it's calm, you can go get it, or you just leave it and you buy a new one. And I was like, that sounds like a terrible plan. But I didn't have any other plan. I've got to run the chain and the rope through the bow pulpit in a way so that it it doesn't end up with the buoy stuck on the boat as it's trying to go through. So I got to run it around and back through. I put the buoy in the water, make sure it's all clear so that when I let go, we'll just drift away. There will be no snags or anything like that. Then it's like, well, this is the moment of truth. Here we go. I wait for the boat to go down into a wave and I yank the chain out of the windlass and I let it go. It falls into the sea, and then there's just a big black buoy floating where our anchor is.
We'll come back for you, anchor.
Well, this is a bummer. We're definitely not going to Corfu today. Who knows how long it'll take to get somebody out to help us, because the closest guy with scuba gear is on Corfu. It's like it's going to be very expensive to get this anchor back. It might be more cost effective literally just to buy a new one. We hang around all day, kind of down in spirits because we don't have an anchor. The people on the island were like, when the water calms down, you'll be able to look and you'll be able to see to the bottom and you'll be able to see the problem. But in these kind of waves, you're not going to be able to look. It's about 20 minutes till sunset and it's finally calmed down. The wind has calmed down, so we're going to go check out and assess the situation of the anchor. We've got our goggles and a towel and some water, and we shall take the dinghy out and see what the problem is. But we're gonna have heavy weather for the next couple days, so the situation might change. To the buoy! Then we get to the buoy, tie the dinghy to the buoy. Our dinghy is leaking again.
Oh no. From where?
from henceforth.
Okay.
Not from henceforth.
Oh no, that's the worst spot.
I start sticking my head in the water, looking to see what's happening. Still a little bit cold. I've got maybe 3 meters of rope tied to the buoy, so I pull up the chain. It's heavy. And I figure, well, we're at the end of this chain. It's about 250 foot of chain. Let's just start hauling in on the chain until we find a problem. Jump it back if we need to. So I can see the chain, it runs that direction. How much of it we can haul in at the moment. Start pulling up the chain. It's super heavy because it's pulling up 9 meters of chain at a time. This chain weighs like, multiple kilograms per meter. So I'm pulling that up into the dinghy, into the dinghy, into the dinghy. Then we get to a point to where, all right, now it's snagged. I can't pull it up anymore. So now we've got a problem. It's cold. So that's caught around a rock. And I can see very clearly that it is wrapped under some rocks. I turn on the engine in the dinghy, and we use the dinghy, steer with the dinghy, and hold with one hand, and I steer around and maneuver to unloop this chain around this rock. It's free, so I keep hauling in on the chain. I've got it loose from 2 or 3 snags around rocks, but now it feels as if it's wedged in between 2 rocks. So I don't know if I can, you feel that? I don't know if I can do anything about that from the surface. It's really, really in there. So I think we've reached what we can do for today. Next would be either to dive on it, free dive. It's probably 23 feet here, or figure out how to get some scuba gear out here. But it seems to be wedged into a crack. That looks like a problem that we need to go down there and see, maybe you just need to twist the chain a little bit to get it to come free or something like that. But, yanking on it, you're not going to squeeze it through some rocks. This is as far as we're going to make it today. We're probably going to need to just drop all this chain here, leave the buoy, figure out some scuba gear, or try to free dive on it. It's about 9.5 meters. Let's just try again real quick. And I start hauling it in, and it's coming in, and it's still coming in, and it's still coming in. It came out.
It came out. Nice.
It caught on another rock. We need to go that way and around it. It's caught under like this, basically. So we need to pull the chain that way.
It's good to see some of the chain back.
We get to a point to where we're over a weed bed, and I see the anchor. I see it. I think I see the anchor.
Ah, good.
I got the anchor.
Yeah, nice.
We are getting this thing back onto this boat today, right now. And now it's really heavy because I've got 9 meters of chain plus a 20-kilogram anchor at the bottom that I've got to pull up. I got it. Did it.
Nice job. Oh my gosh.
There's our anchor.
Oh, good to see you again.
Try to carry this into the cafe. Guys!
Over your head.
Got it. Just like this.
Oh my god. Dun, 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 dun.
Guys, I got it! The plan from the island folk worked. 8 or 9 times out of 10, you should listen to the locals. They've lived there for however many years. They know the weather patterns, they know the geography, and they know what is best to do in what situation. Almost all the time. Sometimes the solution to the problem is to wait and then just check it out later and see how bad the problem is. Because it turns out it was not near what I thought it was. If you don't know the size of a problem, then it's natural to blow it up out of proportion, go off the information that you have, and not build a monster in your imagination that doesn't actually exist. You just take it as it is. Because if you're at the bottom of a mountain and you look up, you're like, I can't do that. But can I take a step? Yeah. Before you know it, you just focus on what you're doing in the moment and the problem that is right in front of you, instead of looking to the future and the whole problem and getting overwhelmed with it because it's just too much to even comprehend. You focus on what you can actually do in the moment. Before you know it, you've solved the problem. And then there is no problem. And you realize that, it wasn't unmanageable. It was just conceptually overwhelming.